104-101, the final score in a strange matchup between the Toronto Raptors and the Milwaukee Bucks. Unfortunately, the Toronto Raptors fall in overtime. Let's talk about it, gentlemen.
Must we?
We got it. We got to break it down. That's what we're dependent upon for. The Toronto Raptors managed to score 12 points in the first quarter and 20 points in the final 3 minutes of the game. Jonesy, was that the weirdest game you've seen?
I ain't lying. I was looking in the media guide for the lowest scoring quarter in franchise history. I think it's 9 or maybe 7.
Damn.
Unfortunately, I remember a couple of games that it could have been, and I started leafing through, and during timeouts I was flipping through. I'd never seen anything like that. We've seen a lot of stuff over 28 years, but I'd never seen anything like that. And we talked about it on Nightcap yesterday, Raptors Tonight, the fact that the contagious nature of making and missing shots. And, Nick Nurse even said it. We tried to throw a few guys in there that might, not worry about it and knock a few shots down. Nothing happened. And then the comeback, Akil, like there's 2 that come to mind before yesterday, but they were over the course of a game. The 30-point comeback against Dallas, December 22nd, a few years ago. And then there was a night in Detroit, Sherm. Do you remember where Jared Bayless went crazy and they were down by like 27 in the second half and they ended up winning? But it wasn't over. Like Elias Sports Bureau said, since they've been keeping running play-by-play records in 1997, no team has ever been down 15 points with under 2 minutes to go and forced the game into overtime or won. So it's a first. I mean, it's history. And
bad history.
Yeah, but we talk about games like baseball or volleyball where you have to finish the game. I got the impression Milwaukee was playing the Raptors and the clock. Raptors would make a hoop and they'd look up and go, a minute and a half to go. We're still up 15. We're okay. And Raptors would make another basket and they look up like, okay, it's 9, but there's like 40 seconds. We're okay. Like they just kept playing the clock. And Toronto, Nick Nurse has always said this, just keep playing. I thought they did a great job in coming back. It's really too bad they couldn't come out with a win after that. But the die might have been cast early.
Yep, the Bucks were down a couple of players. Of course, All-Star Drew Holiday not available, and of course Middleton. But, I mean, they themselves had their struggles to start the game, but eventually found their way.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but they missed, 12, 13 field goals in a row. They were stuck on 7 for a while in that first quarter. And I kept looking at the game thinking, like, the Raptors can't score, but they're not giving Milwaukee free lanes to the basket and easy buckets. So it stayed at 7-0, and although it felt bad offensively, I thought defensively they were in good shape. I can't remember. I shouldn't say I've never seen. I don't recall seeing a field goal percentage of 8.7%.
For a quarter.
Yeah. And I saw that in the first quarter. And it was shocking to me. And then you look at the score, it's 13-12. If you shoot 8.7% in a quarter, you expect to be down huge at that juncture. But no, you're down 1 point. So it's still a game. You could understand Milwaukee playing the second game of back-to-back, not really having their stuff. Tired, a little bit of fatigue first quarter, I get it. But I couldn't understand why the Raptors couldn't find it offensively. Having said that, to be able to make a game of that at any juncture is very impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how that game unfolded. They went on a 28-7 run with about 3 minutes, 13 seconds left in that fourth quarter. 16 points they scored in the last minute.
Yeah,
Impressive.
That's unbelievable. That's
unheard
resolve. That's determination. That's no quit. That's belief in yourself and your teammates. And they basically said to Milwaukee, you think it's over, but it's not. And we're just going to keep on swinging. We're going to make contact at some point, hopefully. And they did. And they just weren't able to get that knockout blow in overtime.
It was funny because Coach Bud took Giannis out of the game.
Yeah.
And at one point,
left.
Giannis is peeling off the arm sleeve, and I'm watching him thinking, is he going to throw it to some fan wearing his jersey or something like that? There's one play, and then Bud turns around and goes,
emergency.
You know what's crazy?
I need you back.
You know what's crazy, too? Like, if you're a Raptor fan and you're watching that game, just, sports – you love it when sports takes you through the range of emotions. You're angry, you're happy, you're elated.
Some people left the arena.
people left the arena. But if you stayed, I mean, imagine how upset you were at the beginning of the game. Then the rush you got in that fourth quarter, then overtime, and then the disappointment to lose the game. Like, for a fan, the only thing that was missing was a win for the Raptor fan.
Yeah.
Other than that, you went through the range of emotions. You couldn't stand your team in the first quarter. Then you fell back in love with them in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned the stat of the night, the field goal percentage, but it speaks to the Raptors' style of play that they want. They won the turnover battle. They won the possessions battle. So
how many shots they have? 100 and what?
I don't know the exact number, but that's kind of the criteria for a good Raptors game that they're trying to go for. So is that what kept them in this game on a night when your confidence is kind of shaken?
I think you make a good point there, Akil, about their style. Giannis had a 30-point, 20-rebound game. He had a quadruple-double.
On a back-to-back?
The 10th assist was the kick out to Grayson Allen, the winning three. But he had 12 turnovers. That's a career high for him, 12 turnovers. And Nick Nurse has the game plan against Giannis. He every time he plays him, he picks it up and dusts it off. I mean, Milwaukee hadn't beaten Toronto for 5 straight games. I think I read something like 707 days since the Bucks last beat the Raptors. So he's got the game plan against Giannis. It's a matter of, can the personnel execute it? And somebody asked him last night, what did you think your defense against Giannis in the game? He just said outstanding. Like, in a word, it was like, I got what I wanted there. And that wasn't the issue, as I read between the lines on that.
I thought their defense was great.
Yeah.
I mean, from the very first quarter, I thought their defense was great. The problem was the magnifying glass was on the offense because of how bad it was. But defensively, listen, the tear that Giannis has been on, I mean, he just came off of a career night the night before against Washington.
55?
Double nickel. Yeah.
0 3-pointers made.
Yeah.
That's
He's
old
only
school.
one of 2 players who has 50-plus points and 5 assists without making a 3-point shot. You might know who the other guy is.
Will Chamberlain.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Oh, is it Mike? I assume because we have that standard set. Everything's Will Chamberlain.
Only 2 players have done that.
Yes.
50-plus points, 5 assists, and 0 3-pointers made. But the thing about it, I thought, to Jonesy's point, they did a great job on Giannis. Not a good job, a great job. But great players are going to get numbers.
You're not going to stop the numbers.
And they're going to impact the game. Yeah. The rebounding, that's Giannis. He wasn't as efficient as he usually is, but he got to 30 points. That's going to happen. But their defense was great on Giannis. And it's unfortunate because they just needed like that 3-5-minute spurt of offense at some point earlier in the game than the fourth quarter to put them in a different position to end that game. They couldn't find it, though. They just couldn't find it with consistency.
That being said, I haven't seen Jokic live yet. To me, Giannis is the MVP.
Okay.
He's the MVP. Impacting the game at the offensive end is one thing. Like somebody said to me, an NBA coach said to me, we were text conversation, he said, that's what Shaq could have been like playing in this era. Like if you would let him handle the ball and develop his handle like that, like going downhill, playing on a Nerf hoop against kindergarten kids, like just when he gets in the lane. But the way he impacts the game defensively, like that is something that, as a deterrent, he's not afraid to pick up the other team's best player. Like all of those things, like people are, like to me, they're getting caught up in numbers around MVPs and what they do offensively. But to me, the wins and the way you impact the game at the other end. I talked to Pat Connaughton last night, and I was standing there, the ESPN guys were standing there and said, finish this sentence. Giannis is the MVP because, and he said, because of the way he plays the game and makes his teammates better. And I kind of said, And the other guy said, what about his defense? He goes, that's statement number 2, because of the way he plays the defense at the other end.
Testify, Pat Connaughton. Well, for more on the storyline of the Toronto Raptors defense on Giannis, let's take it over to our other partner, Savannah Hamilton, postgame.
Akil, there's so many ways that you could look at this game tonight, and I'm going to focus solely on the turnovers as well as the steals. You got to give credit to OG Anunoby because he finished with 4 steals, but 3 of those actually came in the first half. He was guarding the tough task of Giannis, and Giannis is fresh off of his career high against Washington with 55 points. Well, they held him to much lower than that tonight, on top of the fact that he had a career high this time in turnovers with 12. Now, they also held the Bucks in the first half to a total of 12 turnovers, while the Raptors only had 2. So you look at the story of the game, you have to give credit to the Raptors defense, just how intentional they came out to be and performed, holding them, also limiting them in points in the paint as they struggled with Indiana. So that was a huge emphasis going into that. As I talked to Precious, I talked to Pascal, they were very, very adamant about holding down the paint, which they did. So give them credit. Of course, there's a lapses early in the fourth quarter. They were able to turn it around as the Raptors finished with 8 turnovers when the Bucks had 25. So there you go. Akil?
Take you back to the final moments Wednesday night, and it came down to a Gary Trent Jr. jump shot from 3 in order to take this game into overtime. So let's talk about it. Obviously, it wasn't a drawn-up play, kind of a broken play situation, but when it comes down to a situation like that, with Fred struggling, with the three-point shooting not spacing the floor enough for Pascal to maybe get the cleanest looks, is Gary Trent Jr. your guy at the end of games, Sherm?
Well, take it back to your statement, not a drawn-up play. I thought they ran kind of like a dribble weave a little bit to try and find that matchup that had Brook Lopez defending a ball handler. Who it was going to be, I don't know if they expected it to be Gary Trent, but they got it to Gary Trent and had the worst perimeter defender on him. And I was surprised that Brook Lopez just didn't use his size just to crowd him on the three-point line and put him into drive mode and get him to go inside the 3 because they needed that 3. But Gary Trent did a great job. And we've talked about this over the last few games with Gary Trent. He's massaging situations to get shots that he knows he can make. The sidestep, the step back, the floater push shot, the standstill 3. He's done a great job, so it was no surprise to see him do that. I think he ride the hot hand, and Gary Trent was the right guy for that shot in that moment. And I thought they targeted the right guy. So you ask if Gary Trent is the best guy to play that last second shot. He's one of them. I mean, you still can't discount Pascal's ability to get a shot, Fred VanVleet's ability to get a shot, Scotty Barnes' ability to get a shot, and even OG Anunoby's ability. But in the flow of who's playing and making shots and in their flow and in their rhythm, in a game that had no offensive rhythm, you're going to go with the guy who comes into the game playing at a high clip, and it's Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah, I agree with Sherm totally. It's who's got the hot hand. Who's rolling that day? I mean, we've always said this about this team. It's not one guy. I mean, yeah, it's Pascal, but there are nights when other guys drive the bus, maybe not the whole night, but at least part of the night too. And last night it was Gary. So I don't know if you might draw it up for him, but it might be a situation where it doesn't work and the play becomes broken or disjointed, and he gets it out of another sequence or somebody else gets it. But I just think you have to look at the game and kind of judge who the hot hand is. And we've seen Nick do this before, right? For as long as he's been head coach, there's different guys. He has just a thought, okay, tonight we're going to go to this guy. Tonight we're going to go to this guy. So I think it's just a matter of reads, and I think you trust the coaches with that.
With the topic being shot making, we handed off to the Toronto Raptors backcourt, and that's Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent. Oh, Scotty Barnes, sorry.
Fred, with the way it started and the way that it ended, where does that rank in terms of some of the strangest games you've been a part of?
It's at the top, for sure. That was an experience. But, again, a loss was a loss. Wish we could have came out with a W there that would have made up for a lot of how ugly it was. But, take an ugly win. I'm not so sure there's a such thing as an ugly loss.
You guys, how have you not, your collective team, not lost your minds? You know what I mean? Like, no finger point, there's nothing?
No, it's fair. I think just with myself and Pascal having been through a lot in a short amount of time in 7 years, I think just understanding the situation that we're all in, and it's one of those things where it's like not really one person's fault. You know what I mean? It's just some guys, sometimes you're a casualty of war, and just it's very situational, and we certainly all got to play better as a unit, as a team, and you try to find ways to do that. But for the most part, it's not much finger pointing or blaming each other, because we're all out there together in the fight together, and just keep trying to find ways to do it and get it done. But yeah, that's probably the most I can say on that part.
So a word that's already being used to describe this game is weird, just because the first 3 quarters was so intense, and then fourth quarter it slipped a little bit, and then you're a huge reason why it turned back around. How did you process the fourth quarter and coming up so aggressively?
Just had to find different ways to try to impact the game. I feel like most of the game I was just really trying to impact the game on the defensive end and being able to try to hold screens and set screens, but just really took a different approach on being aggressive, trying to get downhill, get to the basket. Not trying to be able to settle, but just trying to attack downhill, playing to my strengths.
And in a sense, even though you guys weren't able to pull out with the win, you guys did something that was pretty incredible, which was have a career high in turnovers for Giannis tonight. How were you guys able to defend him as a team tonight?
Just try to stay active, being gaps, trying to make it hard for him to just be able to get to the paint and have those easy layups and dunks. Just try to take those away. Just try to make it hard for him every time we drop.
All right, now shifting focus to the bench. Gary Trent Jr. is now a starter once again, which means they're going to have to find some kind of punch off the bench. 7 points off the bench last night, even with the starter struggles. Who did the Toronto Raptors turn to, Jonesy, or what can they do to muster up some kind of life from that second unit?
I think they've got capable people, and it's a matter of guys catching their groove. And you've seen inconsistencies from, Chris has been up and down, and his minutes have been up and down. You're waiting for Precious Achiuwa to get fully healthy. Like in the first few games that he's been back, you've seen some good stuff from Precious without a finish on the offensive end. Thad Young's been in and out of the. I think they're definitely capable. Right now, they're just going through a tough phase, and it's a couple games in a row now where they haven't gotten much from the bench. But that doesn't mean it can't change very quickly. I think. You put those hybrid units in, define roles, and guys know exactly where their shots are coming from on the offensive end. I mean, I saw a bunch of times last night where with bench players on the floor, the defensive communication broke down. There's a screen and roll situation. I don't know who hasn't paid attention in the film session or who wasn't talking, but 2 guys are with the ball handler, and then they both recognize, oh, man, we've left the roller open. And nobody says, I got the ball to release the other guy. They both head towards the guy who's rolling toward the basket, and now they've left the ball handler. So I just think for me, the bench there's got to be some clearly defined roles, and guys have to get their confidence back.
I don't know if this bench is built without a Gary Trent-like player to come in with that group to have that offensive punch. I don't know if it is. You look at the best benches in the league, they've got a guy or 2 who can go get it. So when I look at the bench, they work hard, they're going to bring energy, they're going to get on the glass, they're going to defend, they're going to do those things. But who's going to provide that offense? So Nick has had to sprinkle some starters in that bench unit to get an offensive punch. When Gary was coming off the bench, you had a guy who could go get something for you. I don't know if you look at the bench now and see a guy who's going to do that. And to me, that's why for a large chunk of the season, based on injuries, Nick had a Christian Coloco in the starting lineup. He had a Juancho Hernan-Gomez in the starting lineup because he needed something coming off the bench.
That shot creator, someone to create a mismatch.
Or make shots.
And I don't think right now, as the bench is presently constituted, they have that. But they have all the other elements which you need coming off the bench, which is a great thing. And to me, when you're putting all your offensive eggs, so to speak, in your starting lineup, that first quarter against Milwaukee
paramount.
Is a nightmare that the Raptors had because you don't want that kind of offensive output. You want to have guys in your starting lineup. You have all your offensive firepower. You want them to be able to put points on the board so your second unit can come in and maintain defensively, find ways to score on the offensive end, or you put your starters with them and you get some offense that way.
Nick's done that. He's been big on, to Sherm's point, the hybrid unit. Like I called him the energy pack at one time when he would put Boucher, Thad Young, like he'd put a couple guys in there that play with that energy, that are smart or good bench players, but you still got 2 or 3 starters out there.
Yeah.
And to Sherm's point, that's kind of the way this bench has always been built in Toronto. And unless you go back to the days of
bench mob,
a Lou Williams, or when Fred and Pascal were part of the bench mob. So I think they're capable though, and what it's able to do is have the starters not have to worry about doing everything. They still have to do some scoring, but maybe they don't have to do as much of the rebounding, be that much of the energy providers in terms of the defense and the fast break stuff. Maybe the bench guys can give you that, but you're still going to need a couple starters on the floor.
Remember, this is not a shift situation. It's not 5 guys coming in off the bench and playing. So what happens is those moments in the game where you might have 4 guys off the bench in the game, you need that group to hold it there at the very least.
And they haven't.
And those moments, that's what you need.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're going to have the hybrid lineups, but you need the bench guys to perform. And, the truth is Chris Boucher has struggled. He's struggling. He was the most consistent person off the bench for the Raptors, and he struggled a bit. So, and it happens. We're not knocking him for that. It happens. But when you lose that, pressure's coming back, and he's not going to be there right away. Who are you going to the bench for? Malachi was at one point getting it done offensively. He's kind of calmed down. So Nick's trying to figure it out, but it's tough when you don't have that guy coming off the bench that is going to just go out there and get something.
He said it yesterday, I think, Nick, in the or maybe it was a couple nights ago, yesterday at practice. He talked about the bench and how they weren't able to hold it sometimes. And when he sees that happening, he's got to do something about it.
Well, let's head over to Nick Nurse right now, post-game.
Nick, where would that rank in all the kind of crazy games you would have seen over your time? You would have started and the finish.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen one that weird. Really, I haven't. So right up there, right up there with the weirdness of the whole game. I don't really know what to say as far as the offense goes, and not being able to put the ball in and not look close a lot doing it on some shots. But I do know what to say about the defense. The defense kept on plugging all the way. Like you guys probably thinking the same thing, that how were we anywhere within shouting distance for the first 3 quarters of that game with the shooting percentages. So they really did a good job fighting on defense.
What's it say about them that they can have that effort defensively in light of had to be horribly frustrating?
Well, it says, like, I think everybody's well aware we're going through a really difficult patch, maybe the most difficult patch we've been through. And they're, like I say to you guys, they're fighting and trying, and they're trying to execute the game plan, and they're hanging in there, right? I think that the offensive woes probably would have caught up with us, maybe a few weeks ago or a month ago, and got to our defense, but it didn't seem to tonight. So
you mentioned, you mentioned how some of the shots weren't very close, even though they were fairly decent shots. Is that a team that, when the shots start to pile up, when the missed shots start to pile up, you start to think about them?
I think so. I think that, it's a lot like a lot of things. I think it gets a little contagious, right? Like, we had some, and it just kind of started spreading, and we're trying to, sneak a few other guys in there and maybe, see if they'd relax and vault up and knock one down, and that didn't seem to help much either. So just one of those things that spread, and just like the start of the overtime was a great synopsis of the game. We get 3 stops and 2 wide open threes and 1 wide open, like 12-footer, and we got nothing to show for it, and we're down, and we fall down 2, after about 3 minutes of play, right? So that was really a synopsis of the game, and I kind of thought we maybe kind of broke the dam open there, certainly had with just kind of pace and kick and taking shots and having some success with some things.
All right, welcome back. Time to widen our scope on the Toronto Raptors season as we look at what the NBA is talking about. And the Raptors currently ranked 19th in the NBA's power rankings. The conversation around the Raptors in Week 12 of the season, though, was kind of like, what's the next thing to happen for the Toronto Raptors? They're one of the teams we're watching. Are they going to make that push for the playoffs? Or if they do struggle with the wealth of players that the Toronto Raptors have, what would happen if the Toronto Raptors were to start selling? So at this point, I mean, it's a tough question to ask for Toronto Raptors fans and analysts, but at this point, when you look at the upcoming schedule and how things have panned out, are teams salivating for what the Toronto Raptors have to offer?
Well, yeah, but it's a matter of whether the Raptors are going to offer. With a chance to get your hands on, you name a guy in Toronto, and a team would say, "Yeah, we'll take him. What do you want for him?" And now you have the framework of a deal starting to come together. So yeah, they've got a roster like that. And I think it speaks to probably to, I wouldn't say the philosophy, because Masai's philosophy is to win. Like, you hear him say that all the time. That is indelibly etched into my brain pattern, to hear Masai say.
You're blowing up.
Yeah, I'm blowing up. To hear Masai say,
someone heard what you're saying. They're like, what? We got to call Jonesy right now.
We're going to win, and we're going to win in Toronto. But the issue is, sorry.
What is that, by the way?
That's my ringtone.
Wait, what is that? Somewhere over the rainbow?
It's my ringtone. But the issue is, how fast do you want to try to get there? Like last year, I think they exceeded expectations because nobody expected them to do what they did, and they finished 6th. So we know growth isn't linear. You're up and down. Where do you go this year? Are you willing to say, yeah, we'll hang in and not sell guys off and try to get into a play-in, maybe, and give guys some experience? Or do you say, no, we're not going to settle for that? So I think it speaks to the timetable for Masai and Bobby, not necessarily the bigger picture of whether you want to win or not, or try to get a lottery pick. That's my thinking.
It's a weird position to be in, to have NBA pundits talking about Toronto can set the market the way that maybe Utah did with Rudy Gobert last summer, with the amount of picks they get determining what everyone else does. Where do you sit on it?
Well, first of all, it's in season, so that's a very interesting situation. And, the Raptors' long-term, short-term goals are going to dictate this. So if they feel like this is a year that they can move some pieces and still make a run to the playoffs and make a deep run, they'll do that. But if they don't, they might stand pat and say, we'll just play this out and we'll deal with this in the offseason. But it's interesting for the Raptors to be considered that kind of first domino, potentially, to start whatever is going to happen throughout the league. But this is a testament to this organization doing a great job finding, developing, cultivating, and managing players that other teams in the league are going to want.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have options because of that, based on what you've been able to accumulate. So you look at the starting lineup, every person in the starting lineup another team could use, especially if they're trying to make a championship run. All of them. So they're
and it's wide open this year.
They're valuable pieces. Exactly. One of those guys could shift someone's fortune. So it's a positive position to be in from that perspective. The other side of the coin is you want to win in your own franchise. And the fact that you're not where you want to be from a winning perspective, that's the downside of this. You have pieces that are quality pieces, but injuries have kind of impacted it, and you're not able to get to a point where you want to get to. And here comes the trade deadline, and it's becoming real close, so you got to make that call. You wanted a bit more time, bit more health to really determine what you have, and unfortunately that window of time is closing very rapidly.
The eyes of the NBA will be fixed on the Toronto Raptors over the next 4.5-5 weeks coming up to that trade deadline. But the Toronto Raptors' eyes are locked on the New York Knicks. So they're trying to get back into the win column. And when you're playing the New York Knicks, you got to play Julius Randle. I'm starting with Sherm. Let's talk about Julius Randle and what he's done for this Knicks team.
Well, he's been very good. We know that he can score and he wants to score. And here the Knicks go a little misdirection, get the defense shifting towards the screen and roll, kick back to Julius, and power left, getting to the basket. He's physical, he's aggressive, and teams have tried to defend him with smaller players like they've done with Pascal, and he's just too big, too strong. Shamet is just not big enough, and he has everything at his decision making right now, and he's able to just knock down a jump shot over the top. And here's the other element: moving without the basketball. Jalen Brunson acquires so much attention. Julius Randle can play under the basket, can move around, shift positions, and he's a very good rebounder as well. You look at what he's done over the last 5 games. The points and the rebounding are great, but over 5 assists. That means he's getting other people involved, but he's physical, and he knows how to get into the paint, create contact, get to the free throw line, and score the basketball.
The number that jumps out there is over 5 assists, right?
Yes.
When you're talking Julius Randle. Because Jonesy, as you talked about earlier, he's not a pass-first guy.
He's not. And he came into the league with the Lakers, and he said, like, his mindset was, I'm getting buckets. And sometimes passing is the last option. But here he is, the wall forms, he looks to the outside, but dumps it down to Hartenstein. And even though sometimes he's always aggressive looking to score, he's starting to become more refined as a passer. That's a great interior pass to Mitchell Robinson in close quarters. And realizing he's going to have the ball in his hands, sometimes he figures it out. I don't have to do it all. And when I do give it up, it's going to help me. Here he is inside again. Kick out to Quickly. That's a wide open 3. And when you're double teamed, most of the time the pass that's open is diagonal and opposite. And if you can make that pass without the hockey pass, that's probably going to lead directly to an assist. And we saw that in a couple of cases for Randle.
Randle on a tear right now the last 5 games, averaging around 30 and 13. And the Knicks back on another win streak. They had the longest win streak for a little bit. Now they're on a 3-game win streak. Raptors looking to stop that. And that goes down, of course, Friday night. You can catch your Toronto Raptors taking on the New York Knickerbockers, 7:30 tip-off. Sportsnet's got the television call, TSN 1050 radio with the radio call, and that does it for us on another episode of Raptors Today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.